Hi, thanks for tuning in to the Tact Talks podcast. I'm joined today by Michael Banner from Moonpig. How you doing, Michael?
I'm very good, thanks.
Good. Yeah, it's good to see you. I was saying outside, I haven't seen you for, is it 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, about 3 years, yeah.
Yeah, meeting Ezra and Gil for a coffee. Yeah. Just recently started over at Moonpig. Yeah. Before we get into that, I guess, just kind of, can you run us through, you've been interested in computers from an early age, obviously. What's been your journey from that to where you are now?
Well, I guess I can start from like a young age. So I think it's like when I was around 6, and my dad got like the kind of first computer. So like one of the old Packard Bells, Windows 3.1.
How big was it?
That kind of thing. A beast. Basically, that just kind of led on to like sort of passion for computers, because like I thought it was like a bit of a programmer back in the day, sort of entering DOS commands and that kind of stuff to get like flight sim up and all that kind of stuff. And it basically just like spiraled from there. So like as we got newer computers as I grew up, I sort of got into like PHP scripting, that kind of stuff, and having a dabble around with HTML and creating what I thought were like really good websites back in the day. It's when they had like all like scrolling marquees and all that crazy stuff going on. When I went to university, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I wasn't like sort of set in stone. It was a bit like, I'm just interested in computers, so let's do computer science, which seemed like the natural thing to do. And it was only when I was on the course, when I started off in a dabble in like sort of C++, and Java, that I thought, no, this is pretty cool, because I just really enjoy the kind of like solving problems. And there's obviously like many different ways that you can solve problems with programming and that kind of stuff. And the sort of the massive technologies and stuff that were out there was just like really interesting. So that basically led on to obviously completing my degree and basically searching for a job in software development. Fresh out of university, basically joined a small company called Village Software in Liverpool, a small software house where I was there for most of my career to date. It was around 7-8 years. Basically working my way up through the ranks into like kind of like lead developer position, leading teams, that kind of stuff, and project management. So the kind of stuff I was doing there was just predominantly sort of bespoke application development. It was sort of like desktop and web combination stuff. And that basically kind of like fired up a passion around sort of like people management and stuff as well, which kind of led on to obviously the role that you placed me in, a Code Computer Love, back in early 2019, as a software dev lead. So when I was there, that was basically sort of running like a multidisciplinary product team, working alongside sort of like product managers and that kind of stuff to basically work on the strategies and stuff and development of products for our clients. Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically moved on from there to my most recent job, which is an engineering manager at Moonpig, which is, again, to kind of step up in terms of like the complexity of stuff, but yeah, good challenge.
Yeah, but they seem to be hiring you for some reason, so you know your stuff. When you, just out of interest, when you went to Code, what was it like going into like a leadership role, like a formal leadership role in a brand new company?
It was different. It was quite a step up, because obviously even though I'd worked in like that kind of role in Village, which was a smaller company, and it was more of like a friendly, like close-knit kind of company, but with Code being like a bigger one, it was quite intimidating at the time, because like I think I've mentioned it to you in the past around like sort of Imposter Syndrome, which I'm quite openly like I speak about it, and I definitely felt it when I moved into that role at Code, because obviously you're working in like a much bigger company where you've probably got like close to 100 people compared to around 20. And then working with a team of around 10 rather than like around 5 or 6 was a big step up. But no, I think the support and stuff that I got from Code was like fantastic, and obviously the expectations were there for me to kind of like grow into that role as well, which was great, and sort of having that opportunity to be mentored in that position as well was really good.
Brilliant, yeah. Because I always think anyone going into a leadership role in any company, even if they've done it before, which you had, but not in a formal way. But then also kind of wheeling you out in front of your team, like, by the way, this is your new team lead.
Yeah.
It's like, hi everyone, and you've got to get to know everyone. You haven't like built up those years of like respect and
I think so obviously like the main challenges around there is obviously you're going in, and it's about being like empathetic towards the team and stuff as well, and just like really understanding their position and making sure you do like a bit of a reset with them. So you don't want to be going in there all guns blazing and being like the big I am and trying to command everything. Yeah, which is like, it's just not my leadership style anyway. I'm very, how would you put it? Sort of a servant leadership is basically, I think is the actual term. So I'm basically there to help enable people within the team to sort of achieve their potential and like act as like the unblocker and that kind of thing. So I'm not in there to basically dictate everything that needs to be done. Obviously there might be occasions where I need to sort of impart that kind of decision making, but for the most part I like to trust in what the team can do, and it's really about sort of again unblocking them and allowing them to be the best that they can,
empowering them. obviously joined Moonpig recently. Big company, well known, definitely big in like famous in Manchester now for hiring everyone.
Yeah.
Why did you join Moonpig?
Well, predominantly it was a kind of like a personal thing. So we've had twins back in December. So we've already got a 2-year-old daughter and had twins. So from like a sort of financial and career perspective, I just love changing at times where things are really difficult at home. But yeah, basically a recruiter just reached out to me and the opportunity just seemed too good to miss. Obviously, as you say, Moonpig's a fantastic company and like really expanding the Manchester presence. And then again, the role was like, even though it's like similar to the kind of like dev lead position that I had before, it was just like a really good opportunity to again move into like an even bigger company, and the learning opportunities and growth for myself personally were like even greater still. So.
And you're there as engineering manager, aren't you, as your official title? So what does that encompass? Have you got an even bigger team now?
The team itself is actually slightly smaller.
Oh, cool.
So we've got like 5 developers on the team,
Nice.
and then we've got a product manager who I work alongside. So in fact, it's actually smaller, but the kind of opportunities and stuff in there are even greater, I guess, for myself and the team. So it is an internal product team, but we don't really, because of the kind of domain that we own, my team doesn't really have just like multiple disciplines. It's pretty much just all developers. Sure. So my role is essentially acting as like line manager to them. And again, that similar thing of just sort of making sure that they can work towards their own objectives, achieve things personally for themselves, and obviously working on the kind of like overall strategy of the part of the domain that we control.
So the product you're working on, your team particularly, what is that?
So we work within the fulfillment space. So obviously you've got like the several different branches within the business. Obviously you've got like the e-commerce side, which is obviously what people are mainly familiar with, the website and the apps. But obviously once people place orders, obviously different steps and stuff like the things need to go through, and fulfillment is essentially getting those orders and obviously sending them through to the factories to be printed and dispatched. So I work in one of 2 fulfillment control teams. I work in what we call control, which is essentially taking the renders of the cards that come through the system, and basically passing them and like designating them to the different factories. Because obviously, like most people are not even aware that Moonpig actually do cards and gifts as well. So we need to basically say which factory they need to go to, or fulfillment center is probably a better term. To obviously be able to dispatch the cards, the flowers, the gifts, and that kind of stuff. And then the other thing that we work on is sort of customer service tooling as well. So my team owns that side of things as well.
When you say customer service tooling, what does that entail?
Essentially like the back office systems that the customer service agents use to sort of like diagnose issues, like pull up orders, view order history, give like account credits, that kind of stuff. So it's basically the all-encompassing tool to allow them to do everything that they need to resolve customers' problems.
And again, touching on, obviously, you've recently joined the Moonpig, have hired a lot of people, a lot of great people. They had the IPO, they had the recent acquisition. Could you speak more to that, I guess, in terms of why they're growing?
So I think it was back in 2018. So they acquired Greet, which is like a Netherlands-based company, which is a very similar thing. So they do cards and like customized gifts with more of an emphasis on like the gift side of things. And essentially it kind of like complements what Moonpig do. Obviously it's all about like personalization and all that kind of stuff around the cards and gifts. And so that acquisition was like part of the initial growth, like moving forward. During obviously COVID and all the lockdown and everything else, they've seen like a massive surge in the customer base. As you can imagine, with like the high streets being closed, people weren't going to the likes of like Clinton's and Card Factory and all that kind of stuff because they physically couldn't. So we've seen like a massive surge online with people obviously trying to buy cards, which ultimately like put stresses on the systems, because even though we cater for like peaks throughout the year, so sort of like Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, Christmas, that kind of stuff, the kind of demand that came from like the lockdowns was pretty intense. So some of the growth is obviously to help drive the re-platforming that we're doing. So as part of that acquisition of Greets, we're essentially trying to build out an entirely new platform and move away from what is essentially like 18 years of technical debt, and moving on to like an entirely new sort of like cloud native platform with like microservice architecture, that kind of stuff.
Now, what kind of tech stack does Moonpig have?
So it's obviously different on the various teams. So we've got like the Android team and the iOS team for like the app side of things, but predominantly it's all like AWS based with sort of like .NET Core APIs in the back end.
How have they kept people and retained people whilst also growing so quickly?
I think it's the culture. Like I can honestly say that the culture in Moonpig is fantastic. basically they're really supportive. So in terms of like sort of like growth, so we've got like what we call the growth framework. So for people who are coming on, like regardless of what level you enter the business, there's basically plans in place to like really support and nurture the talent within the business and help you kind of achieve those different objectives as you go. Even if you come in as a developer, you don't really want to progress to like senior or any kind of like management, there's like opportunities to expand in the wider business, and they really support that. And I guess the culture itself, there's like a really big learning culture. So like I've recently joined what we call like the Learning Champions working group, which is essentially a program that we run every year where different people can get involved if they want to, and it allows the working group to sort of work with the wider business and really understand what the people like want to learn and get involved in, and make sure that the tools and the materials and stuff that are available for people are there, and people can really like tap into that resource and basically expand in the career and themselves. And I think like one of the great things as well is they're currently trialing it's like we call it like a coaching platform as well, so people can log on, and if they're having like issues in even like personal life, not necessarily just work, you can go on and it's all free of charge. You can get like one-to-one coaching sessions and that kind of stuff. So like they're really heavily invested in sort of that, like looking after the staff and making sure that they're really looking after.
Well, especially in a time of like mental health is such a big issue at the minute. Things like that surely they're going to be so valuable, and I've never heard anyone else doing that. I might be wrong.
No, and I think it's fantastic. It's like I've got like personal sort of attachments to like mental health issues and stuff from my family, and and I've worked with like obviously direct reports in the past who've had issues, and I've been there to support them, and I can like really empathise with their situations. And coming into a company where they've got this ability to have that support network around them is just like absolutely fantastic. So like one of the things we use, I think it's called Spill. It's like a Slack app. So it's obviously you don't have to go through anybody within the business if you don't want to. So even if you've got like mental health allies within the business, you can just use this Spill app, and it'll like speak to somebody who can like really help you if you're like obviously in like a really bad situation, and it's all like confidential and everything else. But it's just basically tons of different avenues that you can go down to get that support if needed.
One of the things I wanted to touch on, you've worked at a couple of companies now. You're obviously involved in the hiring. You talk about this whole growth framework. I assume you need to hire people that are going to be down with that, like kind of a growth mindset sort of people. What is your interview process, and why have they adopted that interview process? So
from like obviously I can't really talk about the other sides of the business, but from like a technical perspective, so I'm currently going through a process now actually. So it's predominantly like an initial phone screen. So obviously that'll be like the sort of my opportunity to speak with a candidate and sort of really understand like what drives them, give them an opportunity to ask me questions, and sort of hopefully sell everything that Moonpig can give to them. And obviously if they've got any questions, they can like really dig into that. Following that, if they're happy that they want to proceed, then essentially go into the typical tech test. So they'll take it home. We spend like an hour on it, so and then feed it back to us, and we can sort of gauge their kind of level of skill. And then we follow that up with basically a pairing session. So it gives them an opportunity to ask us questions. We can give them feedback, and sort of allows us to basically work on a problem which is pretty true to life of what you work on in Moonpig, and basically allows us to see like what their working style is, how they'd work with people, how collaborative they are, and that kind of thing. And then if they want to sort of challenge our ideas, again, that's like a good thing, because we want to hire people who can bring fresh ideas and approaches into the business. We don't want to just be people who sort of take our word for it. We need people to bring new things in, I guess.
No, of course.
And obviously following that, we'd basically follow up with kind of a sort of like general conversations with like myself and probably like a head of engineering, just to really to like kind of gauge sort of like general business knowledge and like how they approach different problems within like outside of an engineering mindset, I guess.
And are you guys fully remote right now?
Currently we are, but I think it's starting from next week. So essentially we're going to be moving back into the office on like a kind of like flexible approach. Probably looking at like 1 day a week. It's basically like per team kind of can decide like what fits best. I think my team's looking to do like 1 day a week in Manchester, because people obviously people hate commuting. So 1 day a week's more than enough.
Definitely. But at the same time, I've spoken to a few people about this, that the fully remote thing to some people is a bit of a deterrent. You know, some people don't like the thought of never going into the office, right? It can be quite lonesome. You can't really have an impact on the business if other people are going in, perhaps. Have you found that people wanting to come into the office more?
Yeah, there's definitely definitely like a desire for people to come into the office. I think one of the main things, obviously, you miss that face-to-face contact.
Yeah.
So that's like one of the things that I've really missed over the last, we're getting on 2 years now, isn't it, nearly?
Yeah.
Is sort of like just being able to sit around, just have conversations, spin your chair around, have a laugh. And I think even things like asking questions are just, it's not the same like having to message somebody on Slack and see if they're free for a call and that kind of thing, where you can just literally tap someone on the shoulder and have a bit of a chat over a coffee and that kind of stuff. I think like one of the main things of working at Moonpig is apparently the culture's like really like thrived and continued despite working remotely.
Amazing.
Which is obviously beneficial for people who want to start and you want to do remote work. So they can still sort of tap into that culture and all the good things that come with it. So you don't necessarily have to be working in the office to benefit, I guess.
Yeah, and how have they done that?
I think it's just because everyone was sort of on board and with like the ways of working and everything everywhere. I think once they went to like remote working, it's just sort of, I don't know, it just continued and people sort of, I don't know, I can't really explain it, I guess.
You know what, I think with most companies, I think the touching base frequently with them is super important, but also, you know, I think in times of distress and times of kind of turmoil, like the pandemic, it kind of, people clubbing together, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
It's been shown throughout history. Obviously, this is dramatic, but like, you know, world wars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, everyone got together and kind of there was a sense of comradeship when you're going through something horrible. So it probably helped.
Yeah, I think that's something I've seen. So even like when I was working at Code, because that was when it basically hit.
Yeah, sure.
So I think I'd been working in Code for about a year before it started.
Yeah.
To go fully remote.
And not as resilient, in terms of what they do as Moonpig, right?
Yeah. So there was, it's quite funny actually, because obviously we had plans to put in place the fact that we need to work fully remote. So we wanted to like test the systems and everything. Yeah. And it was actually down to me that they had to do it a bit earlier because I thought he had COVID back in March. No. So I think it was like a couple of weeks before they wanted to do the test. They had to basically send everyone from the office home to work. Yeah, because they basically said there's a risk of COVID in the office, so everyone needs to work from home now. So I basically put their stress test in place.
Who disrupted your organisation most? Was it COVID? Was it Michael Banner? Michael Banner.
Bit of both. But yeah, kind of like moving on from that, it was really interesting to see like the kind of different approaches and stuff that people took. Because obviously it was all fresh. Like people did work remotely occasionally, but it was only if like they needed to go home because they had a plumber coming around and that kind of stuff. And,
yeah, sure.
The fact that everyone was fully remote, it was just interesting seeing like the different things that kind of emerged from like being forced into that situation. That's quite interesting.
Yeah. What kind of growing pains did you have, do you think? Was there any examples?
It was only silly things, really. It was just like when everyone's on a video call and like people mute. It was just like just the norm now, isn't it? When you go on a call, everyone's muted by default and just all these little things. And I think the main thing was around sort of acceptance of like people's lives in the background. Because obviously with me with 3 children, it was very interesting at times. And it's always the case of it's only when you go on a call that the children want to scream and stuff, or the dogs want to start barking and that kind of stuff. So I think there's been like a massive shift in terms of accepting like, people do have lives other than work, and it's in a way it's been good for kind of understanding like people's personal lives a bit more and having like a better connection.
So true.
In a way, I think anyway.
Definitely, and again, you know, a big point of a big thing you're passionate about is mental health and imposter syndrome, you know, mostly. You know, COVID obviously hit a lot of people hard in terms of mental health, being locked away, and you know, and we've found, especially within tech, that imposter syndrome is a big thing right now, like massively. People not knowing the worth, and I guess why is it such a passion point for you?
Yeah, mental health. Basically, it's stemming from like my father. So he suffers like really bad with mental health issues, which basically stem from getting a bit personal. Basically, stemmed from saving a family from drowning in the River Dee back when I was a young child.
Really?
And that basically just changed his outlook on life and basically caused him to have like mental health issues because he basically sees everything's been like really fragile, and that basically blew his mind up, I guess.
Wow.
So seeing him grow up, well, as I was growing up, seeing him really struggling, makes me think, well, how can I stop people from suffering as bad as he does? So like when I'm working with people and like I see that they've obviously got problems, and just trying to remove that stigma and just make sure that they can feel comfortable speaking to people and they've got that support network. And it's not about me delving into their like personal issues and stuff. I'm not there to do that. It's more a case of knowing that I can signpost them to the support if need be, and make sure they don't have to suffer in silence. again, like when I worked at Village, I was speaking to my wife about it today. Actually, there was a colleague there who was like suffering mentally and ended up committing suicide. So again, that's like a real. Wow. It's the thing is that people, because there's like obviously a stigma, which is obviously getting better now.
Yeah.
Having that ability to really feel supported and have that network around you, especially in work, because you're in work most of the time anyway. So it's having that network there is really, really important. And that's like the reason why I think it's key.
Wow, that's incredible. I didn't realize you'd, and again, we've known each other for like quite over three or 4 years, whatever. I never knew you'd been hit that personally with it. Wow. So that I can understand now why you are so passionate about it. 100%. What can organisations do you think to make it make work a safe place for people to air the problems out?
I think like the kind of stuff I've been speaking about around Moonpig. I think having like making sure that it's like really open and spoken about. Yeah, it is key, because I think if it's one of those things where it's never really mentioned, then the people who are really suffering probably think, well, I can't really voice my concerns and that kind of thing. Yeah. So the fact that Moonpig are really out there around saying like, oh, we've got this Spill app where you can speak to people, and maybe like a support network of like mental health allies within the workplace and that kind of thing. Yeah. I think if it's really like vocalized within the business and people feel like they have got that support network in place and they can really tap into that if need be. Yeah,
because what I found is, and I think everyone's, you know, whether they like to admit it or not, have suffered with mental health in some sort of way, even if it's really mild, even if it's very severe. And I think once there's always that sigh of relief when you talk to somebody and they go, oh, me too. Yeah. And you're like, oh, thank God I'm not weird. Yeah. So yeah, I guess it's tough, isn't it? Because you want to, obviously you don't want it to be a place where you just tell everyone about all your personal stuff. Does it come more from like a leadership point of view, do you think?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think, as was kind of mentioned before, like I feel like in my kind of role as a leader within the business, especially within like the team, it's around making sure I'm there to support like my team members as much as I can, and it's not always around sort of supporting them through the technology decisions and that kind of stuff. It's really around making sure, excuse me, across the whole spectrum, and mental health and that kind of support really taps into that as well. And I think sort of empathise and really having that connection with your teammates is it's like really important, because it allows these things to come out, and you can understand if Joe Bloggs is feeling a bit low one day, that you can, like, obviously the kind of throughput in their workload is obviously going to be different. Yeah. And you can really like empathise with that and understand and obviously adapt. Yeah. It doesn't mean obviously the rest of the team need to know. It's just you can be more accepting of that and support them through those times.
100%. That's incredible. And from an imposter syndrome point of view.
Yeah. Again, this is probably like a childhood thing from me, is like I've just never really had that kind of like self-belief, and I've like almost struggled to accept that I kind of know the things that I know. Yeah. If that makes sense. It's a bit weird. Some of it's probably is like a kind of like social anxiety thing where I just feel a bit uncomfortable. Like I think if you move to a new job, you're always going to be slightly uncomfortable. Sure. Even though people have hired me, I've gone through the interview process and kind of like proven my worth. It's always that, I don't know. It's hard to explain really. It's just like it's just like ingrained into me. Yeah. I just struggle to really understand. Like I don't know. I can't really put it into words.
I think anyone who watches this will know what you mean. It could be like you had a bit of an horrible teacher when you were younger, or a parent that wasn't very supportive, or a partner that wasn't very supportive. And
I think it comes down. Yeah, so it's probably a good example, like you mentioned there. So it's probably comes from times where you feel like you're doing something really well and you get knocked back. Yeah. And I think that probably like kind of like triggers something. And I think it's that probably the fear of maybe being seen as a fraud, I guess. But like it's not happened yet, so obviously I'm doing something right. And like I wrote a recent blog post that I shared on LinkedIn, so I saw, people can dig through and find that if they want to, which is kind of strategies to overcome imposter syndrome, which might not be able to overcome it entirely, but there's like different like things that you could do around like self-reflection and sort of work diaries and that kind of thing to like really kind of like evidence how you've changed over time, and look back on like the achievements you've made. Nice. Because I think obviously it's really important to understand like success, like what it is. It's a very personal thing, success, but understanding that it's not just like a perfect straight line. There's obviously going to be like dips and everything else, and taking that time to like really self-reflect on things that you've done previously and the things you've overcome can sort of like really help over like that imposter syndrome feeling.
100%. Like as you said, zooming out on your journey, because there is going to be dips.
Yeah,
you might think
definitely.
you're doing really rubbish.
Yeah.
But then you're like, oh, but like I was working at this place a while back on X amount of money doing this, and now I'm where I am.
Yeah, I think the main things like I think like joining Moonpig's like sort of triggered it again, and that's obviously what triggered the blog post. And
Yeah.
I just thought, well, let's just speak about it a bit more publicly, and then people like really took well to it. And I think the thing that's really helped me over the last 3 months during my probation period has been around, well, I'm not there to know absolutely everything. I think that's the key thing. Nobody can know everything. And it's around sort of making sure you're in that kind of culture where you can lean on other people to learn new things and really expand your knowledge in that way. I've got knowledge that I can impart on other people, and they've got things that they can give back to me. And I think if you're in a business where that's like really possible, then that's where you can like flourish and be more accepting of it, I guess.
Absolutely, mate. And yeah, it's amazing to see how you yourself, like you said, you suffer with imposter syndrome. It's amazing just to see how you've progressed over the few years that I've known you. It's been amazing. It really has. I guess, looking back when you were younger, what kind of advice would you give to a younger self?
I guess it'd be around that kind of thing of like believe in yourself a bit more.
Yeah, nice.
As fluffy as it sounds, sort of like just really reflect on the kind of achievements that I have made, and not be so hard on myself. Because I think looking back, I've always been like a bit of a perfectionist, and I guess that kind of feeds into that whole thing of, well, if I can't do everything absolutely perfect, then I'm a failure. And that's not the case. It's around making sure you can always see the avenues where you can expand and learn new things. And I guess throughout my career as well, it's around sort of just being open to new possibilities and ideas. And maybe looking back, I probably should have like changed career paths like a bit earlier on as well, and just to like broaden my horizons a little bit. But obviously, my time at Village and stuff like that was like really fantastic, and like I don't want to knock that. But it's just a case of just be open minded.
I guess people coming into Moonpig, you talk about hiring people with the growth mindset, that sort of thing. What would your advice be to people that are coming to join Moonpig or join your team in particular?
Have that expectation to really learn new things, and obviously bring fresh ideas into the business. Don't be afraid to sort of bring those ideas in. Like, you be happy to challenge people. The culture's there to do that. Be ready to learn. There's plenty of things to learn as well. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it, really. It's the culture's there to really grow, and just use that opportunity to make the most of it, because it's probably one of the best companies that you could work for, personally anyway.
Brilliant. That's a testimonial. Love it. Moonpig, again, I've had an exciting kind of 12 months. What can we expect to see, if you can tell me anything, what can we expect to see in the next 12 months from Moonpig?
Obviously, since the IPO and the sort of the flourishing, like the customer base since COVID and everything, just continued growth is the main thing. So there's going to be more and more opportunities for people to join Moonpig and get involved in all various like different departments within the business, not just technology. And basically moving forward, we're like going to be looking at like new territories and that kind of stuff, and
nice.
Expanding in that sense. So that's probably as much detail as I can give. So as we come towards like the end of this re-platform, then we've basically got like a nice blueprint then to really start sort of spreading our things a bit wider.
Oh, mate, I'm excited. Well, look, again, lovely to catch up with you finally, because it's been
Likewise,
so long. And congratulations on the twin. I mean, I'll say that.
Yeah,
the twins. Yeah, congratulations on the twins. Great to see you doing so well, mate.
Yeah, thank you very much.